The NBA Cup dreams are over for the Raptors. They lose to the Knicks with no RJ or IQ. Let's go to the film room.
The only thing that's originally filmed is that and I've studied older films and tried to figure out how I got that impression. I was getting meetings right in the cutting room.
The unique thing about film is an art form
exactly.
is the editing.
So the Raptors put Jakob Poeltl on Josh Hart to start this game. And the reason to do that is because, one, they wanted Karl Anthony Towns and Scotty Barnes to be matchup. Scotty, really good defender for Karl Anthony Towns. And a lot of teams have done this with the Knicks, where if Josh Hart is starting, they will have Josh Hart beat them from three by spacing and camping out their big. Tonight, Josh Hart beat them, and Josh Hart beat them last time too. But the reason he beat them was in multiple ways. Of course, he hit threes, but also Jalen Brunson constantly put him in actions as a screener, and it made Jakob Poeltl work a lot. So, they switch this screen here, and Brunson gets Poeltl on an island, and he just goes one-on-one, creates separation, splash. Same thing here, nice little pitch pass between Brunson and Josh Hart. He gets the switch onto Poeltl, and now he's able to play. He's able to create separation in these opportunities. The slower-footed Poeltl. I mean, this would be a bad matchup on a regular day, but with Poeltl being so limited, it's a tough matchup. And so he creates separation and splash. And in the third quarter was more of the same. Pick and roll actions, weak point of attack defense. I thought Ochai and Jamal Shed had a valiant effort against Brunson, but really it was nothing. And Brunson carved them up. And again, Jakob very slow to react here to Josh Hart, who knocks down the three. Even outside of Brunson, I thought he struggled against Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, Towns just bodies him here. Gets the offensive rebound over him and forces the foul call. And then here he is pressuring Karl Anthony Towns, and all Towns has to do is just fake this dribble handoff, get downhill, and he dunks. And so the Raptors had to change up their game plan. They decided to bench Jakob Poeltl for portions of the third quarter and brought in Colin Murray-Boyles, and CMB was better tonight. He was able to be more of a switch-heavy big for them, and it resulted in possessions like this. So, in the fourth quarter, start of the fourth quarter, CMB is switched out onto Clarkson, guards him, does a good job of negating this drive, doesn't let him get downhill into the paint. Good help by Scotty Barnes, and then CMB with the block. And so there were a few different possessions like this. As we welcome you inside the film room, appreciate you guys as always for tapping in. Where CMB did a better job in the Raptors' switch-heavy defensive scheme against the Knicks. Switch-heavy defensive schemes have worked very well in the past against the New York Knicks. And the reason I say in the past is because this is a different team. Last year, that was their big issue. That was basically the main offensive issue that they had, is when teams started switching smaller players onto Karl Anthony Towns and putting their bigs onto Josh Hart. It spelled trouble for the Knicks offense. The Raptors, knowing this, tried a very similar thing tonight. It failed. And the reason it failed is because Jakob Poeltl just is not 100%. If Jakob Poeltl is this for you for this season, the ceiling of this team is much, much lower than the potential that it has. He has looked very, very bad. And truthfully, I think there are moments in which he's looked good. I think there are moments where you can see he's trying. And honestly, I kind of feel bad because you can see that the effort is there. He was crashing the glass. He was trying to get out. He had a moment where he got out in transition and tried to make this dump off pass to Colin Murray-Boyles above the break, and it was a charge and an offensive foul. It was just out of character. And Darko Rajakovic post-game mentioned that Yak is out of rhythm. I think part of that rhythm is health. And I think the limitations on him because of his back injury management has got him out of rhythm offensively. And it's also got him out of rhythm defensively. It's made him he looks slow out there, And I just don't know what the ceiling of this Raptors team is if they can't get the 100% version of Jakob Poeltl throughout the season. Tonight, you saw a Jakob Poeltl that was laboring to guard in space. And I thought one of the main improvements Poeltl has had throughout his career is that he's improved guarding in space. He was better as a switch big. He wasn't perfect. He's not Anthony Davis, but he was better as a switch big. And I think that some of that has gone away. Some of his mobility has gone away because of this back injury. And back injuries are weird because you just don't know on any given night what kind of feeling you're going to have, what version of Jakob Poeltl you're going to get. And because it's kind of this lottery, every single night the Raptors go out there to see what version of Jakob Poeltl is going to show up, it limits the ceiling of this team. They're not going to win as many games as they probably could because you don't know what you are going to get from your starting center. And what exacerbates those things is that they don't have a legitimate backup option behind him that they can go to that supplements some of the things that they need from that position. While Colin Murray-Boyles provided a decent enough spark in this game, and I think Colin Murray-Boyles in certain matchups can provide some flexibility to their lineups. And of course, Mamu is very important as an offensive player for this team. Both of those players aren't centers. They aren't even 7 feet tall. Jakob Poeltl is the only player who is 7 feet tall or more on this Raptors team. And so he provides an essential skill, an essential size for the Raptors, both on offense and on defense. And they don't have anybody else that can replace it in any meaningful way whatsoever. That is an issue for this Raptors team. And they better hope that over this next stretch, Jakob Poeltl feels better. That is the number one thing for them. Of course, RJ Barrett has to return, and he has to look like himself, and I think that will be very important for the Raptors' life on offense. But for the ceiling of this Raptors team, they need Jakob Poeltl to get healthy, or at the very least, some version of healthiness from Jakob Poeltl. Folks, the Raptors lost this game by a lot. It felt like a playoff atmosphere when I was out there. I was there for the Athletic NBA Daily, but at the same time, the atmosphere was great. The Raptors fans are itching for playoff basketball, and I can see that from how they were reacting, especially in the first quarter of this game. Brandon Ingram was awesome in this game. He was electric. 31 points, 11 of 18 shooting, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals. Really the only guy who showed up in any meaningful way offensively. It's worth noting Jamal Shed also had a season high in points. He slotted in the starting lineup for the ill Emmanuel Quickley. Jamal finished with 18 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds, and a steal. He also made 4 of his 11 threes. And so those were the two main offensive cogs for the Raptors tonight. And they couldn't keep up with the battering ram that is Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, and the New York Knicks. That is a very good offensive team. And that was part of the reason why I didn't think the Raptors had much of a chance in this game. The Knicks just are a machine offensively, and they're a machine that's actually getting better day by day. They've been trending up over the last couple of weeks offensively. They look very good, and they caught this Raptors team at the right time, truthfully, because obviously, as you guys all know, the Raptors are going through their own level of struggles on the offensive end. Coming into this game over the last 2 weeks, they are ranked 28th on offense. A lot of that has to do with no RJ Barrett, but it also has to do with Brandon Ingram going into a bit of a slump. It also has to do with the fact that their bench has gone into a slump outside of Jakob Poeltl, who had 13 points tonight. Mamu, 2 points. CMB, 6 points. Grady Dick, 0 of 3, 7.5 minutes, 0 points. AJ Lawson was a great spark the other day, 2 points. Chucky Hepburn played for 8 minutes tonight, 0 points, 0 of 3 from the field. And so they didn't get much from their bench offensively. And it's been a stretch of them not getting enough from their bench offensively. Mamu has cooled down. He's now 5 of 23 from 3 over the last 8 or 9 games. And I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, the injuries have forced some of these guys to do more and also for them to have to do more, in the sense that, like, if they don't do those things, it's so much more heightened. You know, if Mamu isn't scoring 10, 15 points a night like he was earlier in November, it's heightened because they need those 10, 15 points. Back in November, it was just like, oh, cool. Mamu in the bench is cooking. Hell yeah. They're scoring 10 to 15 points. That's awesome. Jamal Shedd's diming up everybody. That's great. Jakob Poeltl's knocking down a couple threes. Grady's knocking down a couple threes, spacing the floor, etc. That's great. Cool. But now that's not happening. And it's worse because the Raptors aren't getting anything from the rest of their team either. I thought Scotty Barnes struggled in this one. Scotty probably had his worst game of the last couple of weeks. 13 points, 6 of 18 from the field, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. The reason Scotty struggled tonight was twofold. One, I thought the driving lanes were not as available to him tonight because he wasn't playing with as much offensive talent. And two, I thought the Knicks did an excellent job of putting OG Anunoby on him, you know, making it really hard on him on post-ups, on drives, digging in, making it harder for him to get into the teeth of the defense. And in post-up situations, I thought Scotty was trying to draw fouls, especially in that second quarter when some of the physicality the Knicks were providing wasn't going the Raptors' way. They were seeking out foul calls, and they weren't getting those fouls. And Scotty struggled in this game because OG Anunoby is an excellent defender. And OG is just going to do that to guys. And I think OG is actually a pretty good matchup for Scotty in general because he's strong. He obviously is very quick. He has active hands. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. I don't need to tell Raptors fans that. You guys know that. So overall, this was a strugglesome Scotty Barnes game. And so outside of Brandon Ingram and a good Jamal Shedd game offensively, the Raptors had nothing else to go to. They were incredibly, once again, over-reliant on Brandon Ingram to be their savior tonight offensively. And they didn't get that. Brandon Ingram was awesome, but nobody else was able to provide any sort of punch to keep up. This was a dire situation going in, and it played out almost exactly how you'd imagine with them missing RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, who RJ, the one guy on the team that can get to the rim and get paint touches at will and scores 20 points a game for this team, and Emmanuel Quickley, the best shooter on the team, and their only pull-up three-point shooting option that works well in pick-and-roll situations with Jakob Poeltl. 2 key cogs to the Raptors' offense was not there tonight. And so it's not a shock to me that they struggled tonight offensively, on top of the fact that Jakob Poeltl was getting cooked defensively. This was clearly going to be a loss. Now, how do you look forward? How do you look into the future and assess this Raptors team? What a weird start to the season. They start the season 1-4, terrible defensive team, getting outscored 140 plus points given to the Mavericks, bad Spurs game, etc., etc. Then they reel off 13 of 14 wins. Incredible run, albeit against easier competition. The schedule helped them out, but also they beat the Cavs twice. They beat the Hawks. They had impressive games where they worked in the clutch, etc., etc. And now, 7 games in 11 days, they have lost 5 of their last 6 or 6 of their last 7. And now they're going into a stretch where they're going to play 2 games in 10 days. They have 5 days off until their next game. And they also, I believe they'll be playing 4 games over the next 2 weeks. That's big for this Raptors team. If you want any sort of silver lining for them losing and not getting to Vegas in the NBA Cup, it's the fact that they will indeed get the rest that they deserve. And perhaps they'll do it in a way that it won't hurt them in the standings as much. They are, of course, playing some difficult competition over the next couple of weeks. I mentioned the 4 games in the next 2 weeks, but they have the Bucks, they have the Heat, they have the Celtics, and then they play the Nets on the second night of a back-to-back, which should be a win for all intents and purposes. And before Christmas, they play the Heat one more time. So the Heat twice, the Bucks without Giannis, the Celtics who they just played tight, and then the Nets. If you can stay alive for that little bit, and of course after Christmas, by the way, they play the Wizards, which should also be a pretty easy win there. If you can go 500 over that stretch where It's likely that RJ Barrett will come back at some point in time in that stretch. If not, probably close after that. Emmanuel Quickley will be back. And hopefully, this stretch of not as many games over the next 10 days, like I said, 2 games over the next 10 days, gives you a chance for Jakob Poeltl to rest his back and to look a little bit better moving forward. Is that a fail-safe, like perfect version of this situation where Yak will be healthy for the rest of the season? I doubt that, because that's not how back injuries work. But at the same time, it should give them a boost for the next little bit. And that ultimately helps. They need Jakob Poeltl. And they also probably need to make a trade for a backup center. I know there's been confirmation. I mean, look, today the news came out from ESPN's Shams Charania that they are going to look into the Anthony Davis situation. I don't necessarily see them being the best suitors for Anthony Davis. I think the Atlanta Hawks can make a more compelling trade. I absolutely think the Detroit Pistons can make a more compelling trade. I think when push comes to shove, the Raptors probably wouldn't want to pay too much for Anthony Davis. And even if they don't want to pay too much, other teams will outbid them for Anthony Davis. Just from a salary perspective, they would have to include Jakob Poeltl and one of RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. And that's only when we're talking about matching the salary of Anthony Davis. The Mavericks, likely after trading Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis, will want more than that, because Jakob Poeltl is on a contract. RJ Barrett has 2 years on his contract. We all know Emmanuel Quickley's contract situation. And so the Mavs don't want to be taking on large chunks of salary for years in order to trade Anthony Davis. They probably will want a pick or 2, or maybe a couple of your prospects. I imagine they will ask for CMB. I imagine that won't be something the Raptors are willing to do. I imagine the Mavericks will counter back with Grady Dick and Jakob Poeltl, or one of Grady Dick or Jakob Poeltl. And that's probably where the negotiations lie if this really gets serious. Do I think it will get serious for the Toronto Raptors in their pursuit for Anthony Davis? I don't think so. But I also did not think the Raptors were going to get serious in their pursuit for Brandon Ingram. And Brandon Ingram is now a Toronto Raptor. So I could be wrong. And this Raptors front office is always going to be aggressive in these certain situations. They know that talent doesn't just walk through that door. And so trading for a guy like Anthony Davis clearly is a talent play, as many, many trades for the Raptors have been over the years. We'll see if that ends up being the case. I'll put it here, I doubt that the Toronto Raptors will trade for Anthony Davis at the end of the day. I think they will make some sort of trade for a backup big. I think they will use Ochai Agbaji's salary, potentially using someone else's salary to get them in the mix for someone else. I think of, Ivica Zubac, Goga Bitadze, a lot of people like Day'Ron Sharpe. There are a lot of backup big options, and Zubac is not a backup big option. He's a starting center. But there are a lot of options out there for the Raptors to try and look in the trade market for a backup big. But that is where we're at right now when it comes to the Jakob Poeltl equation. Yak clearly not 100%. Back issues aren't something that just go away miraculously. And so you have to find a solution to that if your team is supposed to hit the ceiling that it has this season. In order for the Raptors to hit their ceiling this season, they need either Jakob Poeltl to be miraculously healthy or to trade for a backup big that can supplement some of the things that Jakob Poeltl provides. It's the only way they'll hit their eventual ceiling as a team this season. This team is talented. This team is good when they're fully healthy. And I think they're much better than they have been over the last couple of weeks. It's just a weird start to the season that is exacerbating all of their flaws as a team. They are playing, I would say over-reliantly on Brandon Ingram, and it's forced the Raptors into a tough position. And folks, that is it for this part of the film room. We appreciate you guys for tapping in. As always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do those things to Get this out to other people. We are trying to grow this channel. We appreciate you guys for locking on with Raptors Republic. I really do believe between, myself, Samson, Trey, Cody, Lewis, Zulfi, Kyle, Nate, etc., everybody on this YouTube channel, that we absolutely have the best Raptors content, bar none. And I appreciate you guys for supporting us through this venture to grow this channel and make it what it is. I am going to Las Vegas for the NBA Cup as part of my duty for the Athletic NBA Daily. The Raptors play a game on Monday. I likely will not be doing a recap for that game because I am caught up doing stuff for the NBA Cup. I will see if I can. I don't know if I will. And so I don't want to provide any promises knowing that it's going to be tough. So if you don't see a recap for me on Monday, I apologize. Perhaps I will get one of our many, many talented content creators to cook up something for you guys on Monday. But I will be back on Thursday for the Bucks game regardless. And I will see you guys then. But I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. Maybe you guys get some rest too. Sleep, get a nap in, watch some movies. I know I will. Appreciate you guys as always. We'll see you later. Peace.